All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I'm starting to go over the PowerPoint presentations from JavaScript, the Web Warrior Series, 6th edition, by Vodnik, I think it is, and Gosling. And I was in the middle of Chapter 2, and I ran out of time this morning. So, using return statements, a function can have a return statement like it has right here. So in other words, this function has three parameters, three things passed into it. We add the three things together, and then we divide them by 3. And then we return the result of that division. Now, when I tried it this morning, I had some problems. Still not really sure why I did, but it's fine now. First, I've got it in the onload here. And notice I call 3 numbers. And I just randomly pick 3 numbers. Then I say var average equals that. Then I did an alert, and I got a little bit lazy here, so we can say the average of N1 N2 whoops N3 is, so the average of N1 plus N2 plus N3 is, so what this should do is add together 17, 34, and 128. All right. And it should divide those by 3. So let's do it manually. 17 and 34 is 51. 128 and 51 is 179. So our answer should be 59 3/4. So we're saying here, call average number, and we're passing in 17. We're passing in 34, and we're passing in 128. So that N1 now is called A, the N2 is called B, and the N3 is called C. In there, we add those 3 numbers together, put them into sum of numbers, all right? Then do this. Now, I want to show you something. Just let me first run the program. What do we say? 59 3/4, or 2/3, I think. 17, 24, 59 2/3. Good. Well, that's good. I shouldn't have said that it is that. I should have said equals that. So this should say equals. I think that looks a little nicer. Now, just so you know, and you may not care, we actually didn't need to create 2 new variables in here. So I'm going to comment that out. I'm going to comment that out. And I'm going to say return. And I'm going to say A plus B plus C divided by 3. Okay, I like to put, when I do this, everything into parentheses too. So we could have done it like that. The author did it as 3 statements just for clarity's sake, but I want you to understand that you could also have just done it as 1 statement. Let's run it again and see if we still get 59 2/3. And you see we do. All right. The other way that we should be able to run this, just so you know, if you care, is I'm going to comment this line out. The onload part I'm going to right now comment out. So let's just put in a closing tag, and we'll comment out the rest of the line. Oops. Forget that I'm back into HTML land. So there we go. All right, so now I'm going to comment out my button stuff. And I'm going to say what? All right, we're going to have a button. It's got a value of run. It's got an ID of submit button. When we click it, we're supposed to call 3 numbers and not pass anything in. All right, just like that. Now we should get the exact same results when we do this. The difference is this time when we run it, we will be clicking a button to get the results we want. There's our button. Click it. The average of 17, 34, and 28 is 59.67. So I just showed you 2 different ways that we can basically call the same routine. And there are other ways as well, but I'm trying to keep it right now, so hopefully it makes some sense to you. All right, variable scope. Scope is basically where a variable is declared. So going back to what we had here earlier, I'm going to go back and change this back to the way it was. So this said return result. All right, so I'm going to go and remove that and that and that. The reason I did that is I want you to understand this sum of numbers and this result, they're both what are called local variables. And what that means is they're only known within this routine right here. We make a copy of it and we return that to the calling function. Had we gone and at the top of our program, really anywhere, but outside of any routine, had we come in there and said var sum of numbers var result, had we done that, then we wouldn't need the word var here and we wouldn't need the word var here. Now, that's not recommended because these variables, any variables like this that you declare outside of any function, are known as global variables. They don't have to be passed around like we've been seeing so far. You should try to limit your global variables with an ideally having none. They can produce what are called side effects, which we'll talk about at a later time. But I think I kind of hit most of the stuff that's here. All right, always use the word var when you declare variables. And if you can help it, never declare global variables. Notice that, again, this is a place where JavaScript allows you to be lazy. If you declare a function if you declare a variable inside of a function, but you don't use var, that variable now automatically becomes a global variable. It's just bad practice to do that. Programs can contain global and local variables of the same name. The local variable takes precedence. All right, so this color right here, if I do this, just like we've got it here, this is going to write purple. Now, when we write it out here, it's going to write green because that color variable is only known inside here and we're not returning it. So the color green is what we use in here. Just to prove it, let's grab the whole routine here. Whoops. Copy it to the clipboard. Again, it's kind of a silly example, but I just want you to see it. So this is now a global variable, that color, because it's not defined in any routine. This is a local variable. So we're coming down here and we're calling this, okay? And then we're writing it out. So let's see what happens. Now, I should be able to get this routine done, and I don't think I have to actually call anything from here. I could be wrong, but I believe that all the stuff I need will take place right inside of the routine itself. Let's see. So let's run this. Well, I must be wrong, so let's look. Go to the console, It says cannot set property on click of null. So let's check that. That's line 20. All right. Oh, and I think I know what that is. The reason we're getting that is that's in here. And I've got an on click on a document.getElement by ID, and I'm not using that anymore. So what I really should do is come back up here because I'm not using any more of these routines. And I should just comment them all out except for the one on the end. Like that. Now let's go back and run it and see if we get purple followed by green. Purple, green. All right, again, if we wanted to be a little nicer about it, we could have put a could have printed out a blank line here. That probably would look a little bit nicer, I think. Nope. What did I do? Didn't put in my beginning tag. And there we get purple and green. Blow it up a little so you can see it. Okay? All right, let me close a bunch of these things that I have open here. And let's get back to our PowerPoints. All right. Here are some built-in JavaScript functions. And I'll tell you what, let's take a quick look at isNaN, parseFloat, and parseString, the last three. The decode functions we may look at later on in the semester, same with the encodes. Eval is a very interesting function, but we're not going to talk about it right now. Is finite, I'm not going to worry about that one. That's if you're working with really big or really small mathematical numbers. But I want to look at isNaN, parseFloat, and parseInt. Okay? All right, I'm going to come back to our JavaScript program over here, and I'm going to comment all of this stuff out. Okay, and I'm going to write a function, and it'll be called input some stuff. It's kind of a silly name, but that's fine. All right, and I'm going to have you input two things: var age, and I'm going to put more in there in just a second, and var salary. All right, and the idea is we want to print out your age and we want to print out your salary. So let's create those variables and not give them a value. So right now, the value of those variables is undefined because it's not known yet. All right, so I'm going to say age equals parseInt prompt, please enter your age, and we'll default it to 21 years old. Whoops. If, and we're going to get into ifs in a later chapter, but if isNaN, which means if what we entered was not a number, we'll do an alert that says you entered a non-numeric value for the age. Okay? It's our own little way of scolding them, so to speak. Now I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to change that from age to salary. And instead of parseInt, I'm going to use a parseFloat. And instead of saying please enter your age, I'm going to say please enter your salary. And we'll default that to $50,000. All right. If it's not a number, you entered a non-numeric value for the salary. Now I'm going to come back and explain every bit of it. I promise. All right. Let's call a routine now. Input some stuff. All right. So we're going to call that routine. Now I want to run it a few times so you can see what's going to happen here. Well, I guess what's going to happen is not what I thought was going to happen. So we'll go back again and inspect this, go to the console and see if we've got an error missing after the argument. Oh, I know what it is. I always do this. There's two errors, really. Okay? There's one left parenthesis, one left parenthesis. Now I need two right parentheses there. And I also need one here. That should fix the problem that I had. Let's go back and run this again. Oh, it's still giving me an error, so now what's wrong? It's saying it's in my script file in line 70. It's in the other file in line 70. Need a comma there. And I need a comma there. Now let's try it again. Please enter your age. Let's put in hello. We get an alert that says you entered a non-numeric value for the age. Please enter your salary. All right. And I'm going to put in garbage. You entered a non-numeric value for your salary. All right. Before we run this again, let's make one more change to it. Okay. And I'm going to say if not is NaN, age, and not, is NaN, salary. All right, which means I do have numbers in both of them. Okay. Then I'll do a document.write. And I'll say age equal, and then we'll put in the age. And then we'll have a line break. And then we'll put in the salary. Okay, so if you put in the non-numeric stuff, we'll print it out. Otherwise, or else, we'll just give them an alert that says one or more inputs were illegal. So let's try to run this. First time we run it, we're going to put in valid values. We're going to leave the age to 21. We'll leave the... It says we entered a non-numeric value for the age. It shouldn't say that. Please enter your salary, 50,000. You entered a non-numeric value for the salary. That shouldn't be right. Age is 21 and salary is 5,000 or 50,000. That's correct. So why was it still printing out that error message? Oh, you can't just say if is not a number. You have to say what's not a number. So if the age is not a number, we do that. I'm sorry, that's salary. And the one up above, that one's age. Let's try running the program again. We'll leave it at 21. No error message. We'll leave it at 50,000. We get our values. All right, let's run it again. And we'll put in one valid value and one invalid value. So we'll put a valid value in for age, but we'll leave the salary blank, meaning it's not numeric. It gives us our error message. And then it says one or more inputs were legal. which is exactly what it should do. If we run it one more time, and we leave them both blank, meaning they're both going to be illegal, we get one or more inputs were illegal. So let's go back and look at the whole routine here. This may not make a lot of sense to you right now, and that's fine if it doesn't. We're setting up, this is going to hold a variable that's going to hold someone's age. This is a variable that'll hold someone's salary. We're saying age equal. This part right here gave us that prompt on the screen that said, please enter your age. And then you don't have to do this, but I put in a default value of 21. Then I said if we entered something in for age that wasn't numeric, give us an alert that says you entered a non-numeric value for age. Then we did the same kind of thing with salary. But notice age, I put parse int, and int is a whole number. You typically, if you ask someone their age, they're not going to say 53 and a half, 21 and 7/8, etc. But for a salary, it might be $55,555.55, for example. All right, so that's not a parse int, that's a parse float. If we put in numeric values for both the age and the salary, print them out. Otherwise, print out an error message. Now, I should come in here and start putting in some, person's age. Person's salary. Input age. If this is true, inputted age was non-numeric. If the one down here is true, then the inputted salary is non-numeric. All right, so this would be basically display error message. Which is what we're doing here, and we're doing it here. All right. One more comment. If numeric inputs, if both inputs were numeric, display them. If one or both inputs were illegal, display error message. Now that's a lot of comments, but now that, what that basically means is that anyone invoke input some stuff function. In other words, call it. All right. But there are a lot of comments in here, but I purposely put in a lot of comments, and I did that so that somebody who's reading this, who doesn't know code or is just learning code, would be able to look through it, and ideally, what's going on there would make some sense to them. When you're first learning how to program, I can't really tell you too much about the importance of commenting like crazy. All right, let's continue on. Okay, JavaScript, unlike a lot of other languages, doesn't have a lot of different types of data, or what are called data types. All numbers are looked at as being of type number, whether they have a decimal place or they don't. A Boolean is a true-false. So I might create a variable called married, var married. And if I set it to true, the person is married. And if I set it to false, the person is not married. A string is text, and a string either goes within double quotes or within single quotes. Undefined is when you've got a variable that basically doesn't have a value. And null is an empty value. Null is interesting. You can assign null to a variable, which basically says clear out anything that was in it. If a variable is undefined, it's never been assigned anything, even null. That's why at the beginning, when I put down var age and I put down var salary, I said their values were undefined. So here's some stuff that you could do here. And if you print it out each time, first time it would say undefined because you haven't given it a value, then it would say 40, then it would say null. JavaScript is what's referred to as a loosely typed programming language. All right, what that means is you can change the type of the data in your program at any time. You saw that right here. It was a number, boom, then we made it null. We could have taken something and make it a number, then in the next line we could make it a Boolean, then in the next line we could make it a string, then in the next line we could make it a number again, etc. That's as opposed to the other languages that we learn in this program, those being C#, ASP.NET with C# and Java, and all of those are strongly typed languages, which means that once you declare a variable, you have to give it a type, and once you give it a type, you can't change the type of value that goes in there. So again, you can do something like this. Now, it's because Java is what's known as an interpreted programming language. So it runs a little slower than languages that are just compiled, but it gives you more freedom, and this is an example of it here. Again, even though JavaScript supports two numeric types, integer, which are whole numbers, and floating points, which are numbers that can have a decimal place, they're still both of type number. Boolean, as I mentioned, true, false. Anytime, if you remember earlier when I did this, when I showed you this example, and we said this, what you have in the parentheses is what's known as a Boolean condition. Okay, what it's saying is, okay, check to see if what the age that was input was not a number. If it was not a number, do this. All right, that's an if statement. And there is an if statement that says if that condition is true, do this. If it's not true, then do the else or do that. We're going to have entire chapters that are going to go over this stuff as we go on in here. So if it doesn't totally make sense, I wouldn't let it bother you really very much right now. Strings, again, can contain 0 or more characters. Strings that if you set a string equal to double quote, or single quote with nothing in the middle, it's known as an empty string. And again, strings can be in double quotes or they can be in single quotes, but it has to be 2 double quotes and 2 single quotes. In other words, you can't begin it with a single quote and end it with a double quote, or vice versa. You can't do that. Some examples with strings, rather. Again, these are taken right from your book. If you want to be able to kind of glue 2 strings together, for example, you use the plus sign. In that case, it means string concatenation. You can also use plus equals, which is kind of interesting, so let me show you that. If I write a program, let's take this one we just wrote right here, and we will comment all of it out. All right, and I'm going to say here function display. I'm just making this up. All right, var x equals 234, and document dot write, so it should write to the screen. Documents dot write x. So that should show 234. Let's try it and see if it does. We have to call the routine though, so we'll have to say display. Okay. Now all it should show here is 234. There it is. But what I want to tell you is if we want to add, let's say 73 to this value, all right, I can either say x equals x plus 73, And then if I print out the value again, it should now be, if I did my math right, 307. Okay, so let's run the program and see if we get 307 the second time. Okay, there's the 307. I didn't put a line break in there, and I should have. So let's put in a line break. All right. So let's see if we get 234 and then 307. Oops. Boy, oh boy. Shouldn't be in such a hurry. And there they are. Now another way that I can do this, and I'll get the same answer, but it's a little less typing. So I can replace this value that you see right there, so it's now commented out. And instead of saying x equals, I can say x plus equals 73. So what I'm telling you is this is a shortcut for this. And let's run it and see if we get 234 and 307 again. And you see we do. Whoops, I don't need that. There are a lot of things that you can do with strings, a lot more than you see right here. We'll have an entire chapter where we go over strings in more depth and breadth of coverage. All right. Escape characters and sequences. An escape character is when you put a backslash in front of something. And I think on the next slide here, there are all of our escape strings. Okay? Probably the only ones you'll have to care about in any depth at all will be these two right here. The horizontal tab and the new line. And we'll get into those in later chapters. All right. Operators. Notice we've got arithmetic operators. Some of them you already know. You know the plus, you know the you know the plus for addition, etc. Minus for subtraction, asterisk for multiplication, / for division, modulo, which is a percent sign. Okay, that's done for remainder. Plus and minus will add 1 or subtract 1. Negation will take a positive number and make it negative or vice versa. Assignment is a single equal sign. I already showed you the plus equals. Not only is there a plus equals, but there's a minus equals, a times equals, a divide equals, and a modulo equals. When you're comparing two values for equality, you use two equal signs. When you're comparing them for equality and type, you use three equal signs. Not equals is an exclamation point followed by an equal sign. Not equals comparing for type is an exclamation point and two equal signs. Greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. Okay. Here are some of your logical operators. For and, you use two ampersands. For or, you use two pipe signs, and that's holding down on the shift key and tapping the key right above your enter key on the right side of the keyboard. Not is an exclamation point. We already looked at string concatenation. All right. And the special things that are in there, we're going to cover those in later chapters, so I'm not going to talk anymore about any of those. All right. What's the difference between a binary operator and a unary operator? Well, let's look. Again, I'm going to take everything I've been working on thus far and comment it out. Hit enter a bunch of times to give me some white space here. So if I come through here and I say function, add. All right. And I'm making this up. It means nothing. Var num1 equals 10. Var num2 equals 20. Var res for result equals num1 plus num2. Okay. Addition like this is a binary operator, which means there's got to be a thing that you're adding before the plus sign and a thing you're adding before the minus sign, or before the before the plus sign and after the plus sign. All right? If instead of this, if I say num1 equals 10, num2 equals minus 10, that is an example of a unary operator because you only need something after it, nothing before it. Okay? Again, those are your typical mathematic operators. I think addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division probably makes sense to everyone. Modulus is the remainder. So in other words, if I were to say this, all right, num1 equals 10, num2, let's change it to 3. All right, and I'm going to say the result is num1, num2, and I'll do an alert here of the result. Well, if I divide 10, and if I divide it by 3, the answer is 3 with a remainder of 1. So what I should get here, what I should get when I do this is 1, because that's the remainder. Let's try 107 divided by 4. All right? And then let's run the program and see what we get. And it looks like I did something illegal. Good news is you're getting to see me do debugging, so add is not defined. Okay. Oh, I called it add2 again, so that should be add. There we go. That'll fix that. 3. So what is 3? So remember the answer. Remember the answer to that is 3. Okay? Well, if I say 107 divided by 4, the answer is 26, which would give me 104 with a remainder of, ta-da, 3. All right, so that's how you use the modulus operator. More often than not always, but more often than not, if you use modulo, it's for dollars and cents, or for hours, minutes, and seconds. It's for some kind of a calculation along those lines. All right. Figure 213 is an example of some of this, but I just showed that to you. I showed you what binary operators are already. The JavaScript interpreter always tries to help you. Sometimes, what it does is it makes an educated guess when it doesn't know what you're trying to do. The good news is, more often than not, that guess will be correct. The bad news is, at least occasionally, it'll be incorrect. All right? Let's look at increment and decrement. In fact, let's go back and we'll keep this that we just commented. Let's put a new one in here. Function auto incdec. So I'm going to show you increment and decrement. Var x equal 3. Var y equals plus plus x. All right? Var a equals 7. Var b equals minus minus a. All right? So let's do an alert here. And we'll say x equals, and that should say 3. And y equals, and I'll explain the reason that this is so in just a second, but that should say, actually when we get done, my guess is these are both going to say 4. Okay? And these are both going to say 6. Let's see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Boy, I'm really having a struggle here with my typing, evidently. Well, let's see what we have. X equal plus X plus Y equal plus Y. That should be okay. Oh, I never called the function. Auto incdec. That's why I was getting nothing. The program was doing exactly what I told it to do, which was nothing. All right, so X is 4 and Y is 4. X is 6 and Y is 6. All right, let's see why I have those line breaks the way I do. Is the alert? Maybe the alert is the one that expects a \n for new line. We're going to check that right now. And let's see if now it looks a little nicer when we print it out. X is 4 and Y is 4. X is 6 and Y is 6. Good. All right, so how did we get that? All right, what this says is add 1 to X and then take whatever X is, which is now 4, and assign it to Y. That's why they were both 4. This is called the pre-increment operator, which means increment first and then assign. This is called the pre-decrement operator. So this says subtract 1 from A, making it 6, and then assign the 6 to B. That's why they're both 6. Now, look at the difference between that. And I'm going to comment this one out. And now I'm going to put in X plus plus. And do the same thing here. And now I'm going to say B equals A minus minus. We're going to get different answers. We had 4, 4 here, and we had 6, 6 here. Let's see if we get the same answers now. We should not. 4, 3. 6, 7. Well, what's going on? Well, this is called the post-increment and post-decrement operators. This says, all right, take X, which is still 3, and assign it to Y. Then add 1 to X. So X should be 4 and Y should be 3. This one says take A, which is 7, and assign it to B. Then subtract 1 from A, making it 6. All right, now hopefully that made some sense to you. You're going to see these over and over again as we go on throughout the semester. All right, I'd like to try to finish up this chapter. So I showed you the plus plus and the minus minus. Here's some more examples, and you can take a look at those at your leisure. Again, remember, assignment is a single equal sign. All right? Now, we talked about this, but you haven't really seen it. Equals, you saw the plus equals. The minus equals works the same way, except it subtracts instead of adds. The times equals works the same way, except it multiplies instead of adds. The divide equals works the same way, except it divides instead of adds. And the modulo equal works the same way, except it does a modulo instead of an add. Okay? So there's programs in here that demonstrate all this stuff. I'm not going to run through those. All right? Finally, let's take a look quickly at the comparison and the conditional operators. So I'm going to go back to where I was here. I'm again going to comment all of this out. And I'm going to write myself yet another function. Function, we'll call it legal or not. Now I want to remember that when I get done, I want to call the function. So I'm going to type in here legal or not. So that'll call the function. All right. Var, in fact, we did this before, if you remember, where we entered the age. And we're not even going to check for it being numeric or not. All right. So we're just going to say var age equal that. Okay. If age is greater than or equal to 21, we will alert you are an adult. Otherwise, else, which means if that wasn't true, we will do an alert. You are a child. Okay, so if we put in a number that's greater than or equal to 21, okay, it'll say you're an adult. Otherwise, it's going to say you're a child. Let's see if that one works, or if I made many mistakes typing. Okay, please enter your age, 21. You are an adult. We run it again by just refreshing our browser. Let's put in 3. You are a child. What if we put nothing in there? It says you are a child. All right, because that's not a number that's greater than 21. Or greater than or equal to 21. Okay? Now, notice we've got equal and we've got strict equals. And we've got not equals and strict not equals. That's a little confusing, so let's look at that. All right? So I'm going to come in here, and we got legal or not, which is fine. So let's comment this out. And we'll write another function. All right. And we're going to call this function strict or not strict. You'll notice the way that I'm capitalizing here. The first word is not capitalized. The first letter of every other word is capitalized. That's known as camel casing. All right. So I'm going to say here, var x equals 0. Var y equals 0 in double quotes. And var z equals 0 in single quotes. All right. Now if I say if x equal y, alert, they are the same value. And if that's not true, or else, we'll do another alert and we'll say that they're different values. Oops. So they are different values. Okay, well, they look like they're different values because one has quotes around it and the other one doesn't. But let's check. Did I call the routine? Yep, I called strict or not, so good. And it says they are the same value. What? Well, they're the same value because the system just says that and what's inside of here and what's inside of there. Okay, so if I make this z, I'm going to get the same thing. So I changed it from y to z, from double quotes to single quotes. They are the same value. But notice if I run it again, and instead of putting in an equal sign, 2 equal signs, I put in 3. That means do they have the same value and are they the same type of variable? So now notice when I run this with 3 equal signs, oops, I don't want to run it in IE. Then it comes out and it says they are different values. All right, so if you check things if you want to check to make sure that they're not only the same value, but they're also of the same data type, you use 3 equal signs instead of 2. The conditional operator is kind of a neat one, so let's take a look at that. Again, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to write another thing in here that's called function max value. Now, what is wrong? Why am I? Oh, I want to put a JavaScript comment in there. There we go. All right, so I can do this. I'm going to say var x equals 21, var y equals 17, var max, and I'm not going to give it a value. Okay, and let me make sure I call it down here. So I'm going to say here, if x is greater than or equal to y, max equals x. All right, that means that x is the bigger one. Else, max equal y. Alert, the max is max. And that should say the max is 21, if I wrote it correctly and I didn't put any mistypings or anything. The max is 21. Good, that's what we want. All right, now what I want to show you is I can take this code that was how many lines long? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. I'm going to comment out all 8 of those lines. And I'm going to rewrite them as one line. All right, so I'm going to say here, max equals x greater than or equal to y, question mark x colon y. So what I'm telling you is this one line here, that one line does the same thing as this. It's called a conditional operator. And the way that it's read and the way that it's used is like this. It says, check to see if x is greater than y. Whatever comes after the question mark is, if it's true, then take x and assign it to max. Whatever comes after the colon is what's false. So if it's false, take y and assign it to max. Now you just saw this, and it just printed out on the screen in an alert. Max is 21. So let's see if we get the same result. The max is 21. So you can see that indeed we do. All right. Okay. There's their example of the conditional operator. So now, in many ways, the JavaScript language is a little quirky. Values are defined as being either falsy or truthy. The 6 different types of falsy values are shown right here. They are double quote, -0, 0, NaN, which is not a number, null, or undefined. Anything else that you put down is known as being truthy or true. So these 6 are treated like a Boolean false. Everything else is a Boolean true. All right. And, or, and not. Okay, let's take a quick look at those. All right. Let's suppose that I decide that I'm going to have a party, and I'm going to invite, and I'm not going to even write code here, but I'm going to say I'm going to have a party. Okay, so party. And there's two things. One, you must be greater than or equal to 21 because alcohol will be being served. And two, you must be in the AWD program. Okay? So I'd write that as something like this. If age is greater than or equal to 21 and program is equal to AWD. So in that case, both of those would have to be true. All right? So the only way you could go to the party would be if you meet both of those criteria. Okay? So when you use an and, what's to the left of the and what's to the right of the and must both be true. If either one is false, the whole thing is false. Now, let's suppose I buy food for 100 people, and I found out that 3 are coming. Well, then if I change this to an or, this says that anyone who is greater than 21 or anyone who's in the AWD program regardless of age or anyone who meets both criteria can come to the party. So when you use an ampersand for and, everything has to be true. Otherwise, the whole thing's false. When you use a pipe sign, which are what these are, for an or, that just means that any and or all have to be true. Right? Oops. Don't want to do that. I want to do that. Now, there's a lot of special operators in here. Some of these we're going to come across. Some of these we've already looked at. But many of them are shown in later chapters, so don't worry about them right now. Same with these. All right. Operator precedence means what happens first. And it's kind of pretty much like what you learned back in high school or junior high. You do multiplication and division before you do addition and subtraction. All right. If you want to change the natural order of things, you use parentheses. And that's what they're talking about here. So if I do this, I do the 30 divided by 5 first, which gives me 6, and then I multiply it by 2, which gives me 12. I don't do the 5 times 2 first, which is 10, and then divide it by 30, which would give me 3. No. I go right to left, or left to right, I should say. Again, if I want to change the natural order, I use parentheses. So this was a really long chapter. We talked about how to use functions to organize your JavaScript code, how to use expressions and operators, and how to identify the order of precedence in an operator. In the next chapter, which is Chapter 3, so when we get there, and I'm getting there. All right, so when we get to Chapter 3, in that chapter, we are going to go over JavaScript control flow, and we'll talk about looping, and we'll talk about what are called if statements and what are called switch statements. So I'll be back with that shortly.